And Sasha, just give me a thumbs up when we're good. All right, great. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the MAPC Fall Council meeting on Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. And just so if it's not completely obvious, the Fall Council meeting of MAPC is being conducted by Zoom remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order from March 12th, 2020. So I want to just kind of formally welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see so many people here. And I'm just thrilled that you've made it a priority when everyone has so many things going on. So just a couple kind of housekeeping things before we kind of get going here. Obviously, there's a lot of people in the meeting. We are on live on YouTube. There is closed captioning as well available, and we are going to utilize the chat, the group chat, which is probably to the right side of your screen. We are convening, again, it's members by video conference, so you receive the login credentials when you registered. So if you have not heard, I just would like to ask everyone to rename yourself with your full name and affiliation. So for instance, myself, it's Erin Wortman, Stoneham, Stoneham, and for instance, Juan Vega, EOHED, for someone maybe representing an agency. Again, this meeting is being recorded and most members are participating by conference. So please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. The recording of this meeting and the caucus that we will have today will be posted to the MAPC website as soon as it can be done. So we're just going to go over kind of quickly some of the ground rules. If everyone will so permit me to cover a few rules so we can share some expectations and have a clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. Please remember that your phone or computer should be muted unless you are asked to speak. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. We have a lot of staff on the call who are super helpful and knowledgeable. So any tech needs you have or concerns, just kind of utilize the chat and someone will be able to help you. And again, we will be utilizing the Zoom chat for all motions, seconds, and votes, and if you have any questions. So you need to identify yourself throughout the meeting. So again, please rename yourself and then please use the Zoom chat, but I have a lot of screens up right now. I have a lot of screens up right now, but I do see some chats coming in, so thank you so much. If you're wondering how to know if we're recorded, you will look on your top left where it says recording on YouTube. And please utilize the reaction option to raise your hand if you have a question as well, okay? It sounds much more complicated than it is, but we're gonna get through it and it's gonna be a great time. And then council members who must call in rather than join by video will be asked by our tech support team at MAPC to identify themselves to the team. So we have a clear recording of kind of who you are and how your votes go. So without further ado, and before you completely sign off because you are totally bored at the rules, I'm gonna call on Heidi and we're gonna do something a little different with roll. So Heidi, take it away.
Good morning. What we are going to ask you to do is present yourself in the chat section as either present or here. I'm going to call the caucuses, and as a caucus, would you please type into the chat feature present or here. So we're going to start with first ex officio members. If you would please type into the chat section that you are present or here now. Okay, wonderful. Next, we're going to move to gubernatorial appointees to the council. If you could please, Buzz, I'm glad you're happy to be here too. I'm happy you're here. All right, got quite a few gubernatorial appointees. And now if we could have the cities and towns. Okay. All right. Okay, wonderful. And I believe, okay, we're going to tally that and make sure that we have quorum for the vote for the minutes. Thank you very much for doing that. This is going to be a easier way of us to double check that you're all here. So I'm going to turn it back over to Erin to continue, and I will let her know in the chat section whether we have quorum or not, so that we can move on to the motion for to accept the minutes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Oh, great. Thank you so much, Heidi. And I guess I neglected to introduce myself. I am Erin Wortman, and I'm the MAPC president. So that's why I'm running the meeting. Sorry. And thank you all again for coming again. Oh, thank you, Keith. Appreciate the enthusiasm. So while I wait for Heidi to tell me that we have quorum, which I believe we do, something that we're going to do next is we have 2 vacancies on the ex officio side of the executive committee. So I'm going to call on the executive ex officio members to meet virtually in a caucus to fill the 2 vacant seats on the executive committee. So by the magic of Zoom, those ex officio members will be magically transformed to a caucus space virtually at this time or very shortly to elect those 2 members. And while they move, are those people moved?
We are waiting on, yes, everyone has moved.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sasha. I appreciate it. Okay, Heidi, how are we looking for quorum?
We have just made quorum.
Congratulations, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That is really impressive. So thank you so much. Great. So we're going to, while the ex officio members are electing their 2 representatives for the executive committee, we're going to kind of continue on with the business part of the meeting. And I just want to remind that the council members that all motions, seconds, and voting will be done in the chat section. So the first item under business is approval of minutes from our annual council meeting, which feels like 100 years ago, on May 27th, 2020. So I'm going to ask for a motion. Thank you, Bob Cohen and John DePriest. You made that second. Oh, thank you all for those motions. So I have that Bob Cohen made that motion and John DePriest made the second. Are there any questions on that item? Seeing none, I would like delegates or alternates, if you're here instead of the delegate, to please vote on the motion before you to approve the annual meeting minutes. Okay, thank you for the ayes. Those opposed to approving the minutes? Abstentions? Great, it looks like motion passes. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, I see your abstentions and they will be recorded, Tina and Lou and Colette. Great, thank you so much. Okay, next up on the agenda is the announcement of MPO election results. So I'm going to call on Eric Barassa, who is the MAPC Transportation Director, to announce the results. Eric?
Aaron, if Eric is not here, I could text him. We can move on. I know I'm next, but we can move on and have him come in at some point.
Sure thing, we can do that. That sounds great.
Maybe I could ask Rebecca to text him since I'm going to be giving my remarks, I think.
That's totally fine.
I think the twins might be very busy right now, so that could be preventing him from getting on the screen.
Totally understand. Okay, so the next item of business is just a report of the Executive Director, MAPC Executive Director, Mark Drayson. Mark?
Good morning, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all. It does feel like our annual meeting was a very long time ago. I guess it was 6 months ago. So, and a lot has happened, and our lives are both full and difficult and challenging. We all know that. I want to particularly welcome, I believe that Senator Boncory and Representative Gonzalez have both joined us somewhere on the screens, and I want to welcome them as our honorees today for Legislator of the Year. Senator Boncory on his own and Rep. Gonzalez on behalf of the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I also want to give special congratulations to our General Counsel, Marjorie Weinberger. Rebecca will be presenting to her the Robert Davidson Award a little bit later in this agenda, and I wanted to add my congratulations to it as well. The items I want to focus on today are really two. I want to talk a little bit about MAPC efforts on COVID response and recovery, and I want to actually connect that to our MetroCom and regional planning process. We left the office on the 16th of March. That was our first day remote. And since that time, the agency has focused a tremendous amount of attention, ingenuity, and commitment, as well as resources, to helping our cities and towns, our colleagues in state agencies, and many folks in the business community and the nonprofit sector to deal with the onslaught of COVID-19. I could thank almost everyone on the staff, but I want to particularly recognize my Deputy Director, Rebecca Davis, Lizzie Wayant, the Director of Government Affairs, Mark Fine, the Director of Municipal Collaboration, and Barry Keppard, the Director of Public Health, and everyone who works for and around them. That is our core team. They and their deputies have been working so hard to address these issues and to try and help all of our communities to find ways to protect people's health, people's lives, and people's livelihoods, and to do those things simultaneously. I think they deserve our congratulations and thanks. I think particularly of Amy Riley and Dan and Austin and all the other folks who have worked so hard with the Health and Medical Coordinating Coalition, fielding literally thousands of calls and emails and requests for PPE, for emergency services, for all kinds of materials to try and deal with the surge when it happened. And now, of course, sadly, the surge that we're dealing with now, which is not a surprise to anyone, but which we are in the midst of and we must deal with on a daily basis. We are so proud to have the HMCC under the umbrella of MAPC and to be able to claim with truth that we are, through them, on the front lines of dealing with this pandemic. The pandemic has revealed many things about our society and about our Commonwealth: issues of inequity, a lack of preparedness, but also strength and resolve. We are going to continue to work with every one of you to try and find ways to address the issues that are brought here as a result of this pandemic. And at the same time that we are working to try and deal with the issues we're facing today, we are working to try and ensure an equitable and meaningful recovery. I think of the work that Betsy Cowan and her staff at Economic Development are doing with so many of you to try and provide support to small businesses, just so they can get through this period of time to the point where we have a vaccine and hopefully a more normal life. I think of the work that our data services and our housing staff have both been doing to help deal with the crisis of evictions and foreclosures, which we have thus far averted, but we do not know if we are going to be able to avert it over the next several months. And I think also of the work that's being done by our climate staff and our energy staff to keep the critical issue of climate front and center in our minds and in our lives, even though there is a tendency to forget about it a little bit because we're so focused on other things. But it is incredibly important to remember just how central that is to our future health and our future well-being. And now to try and take advantage of what just might be, fingers crossed, a little bit more of a consensus in America to accept the reality of climate change and to begin addressing it in meaningful ways. And although it is not always ascribed to COVID, but I think COVID has had a contribution in this regard, sadly. We are reminded every day of the racial inequity in our society and of our need as cities, towns, state agencies, and regional actors to call those issues out front and center, and to say that all the public policies and spending priorities we adopt must have as a component, and a central component, addressing those issues of racial inequality that harm so many of our residents and citizens, and weaken the strength, the prosperity, and the example of the Commonwealth and of the United States of America. We are trying so hard every day to see if we can make sure that that issue stands front and center in our work. And at any time, if I flag in that regard, I know that there are powerful and committed members of my staff who will remind us gently but firmly of the need to put that front and center in all of our programming and to speak about it openly and with clarity. Something that I think COVID has demonstrated for us is that there is always uncertainty in our lives, frequently more than we like to admit. And one of the ways we at MAPC and as planners deal with uncertainty is explicitly to say, we are going to spend a certain amount of our time and effort figuring out what things are likely to be like in 20 or 30 years, and to set up for ourselves the steps we need to take to address that now. That's what MetroCommon is all about. I often talk every Monday at 3 o'clock, I talk with executive directors from major metropolitan regional planning agencies throughout America. We spend a lot of our time on COVID, but we spend a lot of our time on other things as well. And a number of us have been saying, you know, it is really hard to do a major regional plan, a decadal regional plan at this moment in time when so much is unsure. But then other people say to us, who finished their regional plans just a year ago or 2 years ago, boy, we missed it. We didn't anticipate this at all, and we didn't adopt policies and practices that would help people to address it. So we have that opportunity. Through MetroCommon, we have that opportunity. And even though we've had to switch gears and change systems and do community engagement in different ways from what we anticipated just 6-8 months ago, we have the unique opportunity to say, we are going to create a regional plan that recognizes certain elements of uncertainty that we didn't think about a year ago. And we are going to have stronger recommendations, better projections, and a better common sense of our purpose than would have been the case otherwise. So I'm excited that you folks are going to spend much of this morning, focusing with Eric Hove and Lizzie Grobel and all the other members of the MetroCommon staff on trying to address what issues and priorities we are going to place in that regional plan for all of us throughout the greater Boston region and hopefully for the Commonwealth as well. I want to not only thank Eric and his staff for the tremendous work that they've been doing with this enormous shift in the regional planning process, but I want to close with a special word of thanks to our MetroCommon project manager, Lizzie Grobel, who has been with us for the past several years, has helped to shepherd through this process, and is moving on to other things in a few weeks. We're going to miss her tremendously, but she has contributed tremendously to our region going forward for a long period of time. Thank you very much, Lizzie. And so with that, I'll close. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm thrilled by the tremendous turnout, and I'll turn the program back to Erin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was great. We want to welcome back the ex officio members. We want to welcome back the ex officio members for that, for coming back so expeditiously. And I'd like to call on Martin to reveal who is the staff member who hosted the caucus, to reveal the results.
Thank you very much, Erin. So we did have a successful election to fill the 2 seats that are open for that caucus, and our newest members of the executive committee are Lauren Shirtleff from the Boston Planning and Development Authority and Courtney Rainey from the Department of Environmental Protection. So congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin, and welcome to Courtney and Lauren. We're excited to have you on the executive committee for the remainder of this term. And I look forward to having you present at our monthly meetings. So thank you so much. Another update we have, and I think Rebecca is going to do it, is the MPO election results. Rebecca?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Eric Barasa is teaching virtual first grade. So I have the election results from the MPO. Beverly for the North Shore Task Force, Medway for SWAP, Brookline for at-large town, and Everett for at-large city. And we're excited to have them all participate in the MPO.
Awesome, and congratulations to those MPO newly elected or existing elected officials. The MPO is super important. Obviously, they determine federal transportation dollars, and I know so many communities and people in and around the city of Boston and throughout the region really are touched every day by those MPO dollars. So thank you so much for the commitment. Those people have pledged or offered to serve in that capacity. So thank you. So next order of business on the agenda is our awards, and I am thrilled to kick it off. We will be starting with the legislator of the year. And just to kind of give some context, MAPC has not given this award in a couple years, but we actually had so many great legislators to pick from this year. And I really want to thank the government affairs team for all their work and what they do in and around the State House to really enhance MAPC's role in legislative priorities and for all the work they put in. It's hard to see it, but it's very well seen. if that makes sense. So I'm going to start to introduce our MAPC Legislator of the Year for 2020. And this is award is going to Senator Joe Boncore, who's on the call. Thank you so much, Senator, for joining us. And he's the senator of the 1st Suffolk and Middlesex District. And this district consists of parts of Boston, some of Cambridge, all of Revere and Winthrop. And Senator Boncore is incredibly committed to housing and transportation issues. One of which is the Shannon Grant. Senator Boncore has been the lead Senate sponsor of Senator Charles E. Shannon Jr. grant to prevent youth and gang violence program since 2018. He led efforts to increase the program to $11 million in FY20, which was a huge accomplishment. The Senate is debating the FY21 budget yesterday, but we're so grateful that includes the level funding for Shannon. On the housing front, he's the chair of committees on housing last session. Senator Boncore worked closely with House Chair Kevin Hannan in shepherding the $1.8 billion affordable housing bond bill through the legislator and to the governor's desk. Senator Boncore has also helped secure increased funding for affordable housing programs in the state budget and move forward legislation to help address our affordable housing shortage. With transportation, this session as chair of Committee on Transportation and at the direction of Senate President, Senator Boncore convened a working group to help address the Commonwealth's transportation needs through policy recommendations. He has led effort in the Senate to successfully add $10 million in municipal and regional planning grants to the still pending economic development bond bill. And Senator Boncore has also sponsored several key MAPC legislative priorities, which include, but are not limited to, the TNC or Transportation Network Company legislation, and the income tax credit for below market rent. And a little about Senator, prior to joining the Senate in 2016, he graduated from Mass School of Law in 2007. He joined his family's law practice, then as a public defender with the Suffolk Lawyers for Justice. And in 2009, won a seat on the Winthrop Housing Authority Board and elected chair of the board. And he led Winthrop's affordable housing programs. He was born and raised in Winthrop, Massachusetts, where he lives with his family, and he's the grandson of immigrants who came to the United States. And something that we noted when we kind of deliberated on this award is on executive committee, every time the government affairs team kind of gives an update, Senator Boncore's name is mentioned at every single meeting. And I think that's a true testament to his commitment to MAPC, its priorities, and really moving the region forward. So it gives me a great pleasure to give virtually, this is my virtual gift, Senator Boncore with the Legislator of the Year Award. Senator?
Wow, Erin, thank you so very much. And I'm so appreciative to the Metro Area Planning Council for this recognition as Legislator of the Year, and for you including me in this in your meeting and taking some time. I appreciate everyone for joining in this. I wish I could be with all of you, but we find ourselves in the circumstances we're in. And it wasn't until you kind of zoomed in on me here that I realized that you can see the Similac and baby products behind you. And what Erin did mention is I'm most proudly have the title of father now, and I have two twins who are 13 months old. And it's really, it's been the kind of the silver lining of this whole work from home thing, as I've been able to spend a lot of time with them. But really, in my 4 years, almost 5 years now as a state senator, I have truly valued above maybe all other partnerships, the partnership that my office has shared with MAPC. As the Senate has undertaken issues ranging from housing and transportation to public safety and sustainability, I have often sought insight from Mark Drazen and the government affairs team. Of course, I couldn't, I'd be remiss to mention, I often seek, sometimes right on the Senate floor. You can find me texting Lizzie Wyant for advice or talking points on a certain issue. And that's really the kind of relationship that I have had with MAPC. And I think I'm a better legislator for it. And hopefully in the policy that we pass, the Commonwealth is a better place for that relationship. I too want to congratulate Marjorie Weinberger on her special recognition today as General Counsel for the MAPC. You've had a great history in, a great career in transportation, which I noticed and I'm proud of. And of course, to Representative Gonzalez and the Black and Latino caucus, you know, as the legislature takes up new legislation, you know, going forward, since, you know, what we've seen in the cultural change in this country and in this state, we've committed to taking a look at everything through a lens of racial justice to cure some racial inequities and systemic racism that has existed in the Commonwealth and the country for so too long. So the Black and Latino caucus and Rep. Gonzalez has a seat at that table and really at every table as we continue to, you know, build into you know, what the new normal is coming out of COVID, but generally on all legislation, whether it relates to police reform, economic development, housing and transportation, Rep. Gonzalez is on the table too. Congratulations, Representative. It's great to be with you and share the stage with you today. I am so proud of the work we've been able to do on the Shannon grants with Diego. And Shirley, when I took over the Shannon grants from Senator Donahue, I think the allocation was about $7 million. So being able to bring that back up to $11 million, seeing the good work it does in communities and policing and working with the community has really been one of the highlights of my time during the Senate budget when I get up to make this, you know, the Shannon Grant floor speech. Luckily, I didn't have to do that this year because we level funded it. So sometimes, you know, you work from the outside in, and Mark will tell you sometimes you work from the inside out. This time we were successful working from the inside out and just having it included. So everyone on the government affairs team could take a deep breath. But you have an incredible government affairs team. I think Erin said sometimes you may not all see what they're doing, but at the State House, they are front and center on all the major bills, whether it's housing, transportation, or, you know, economic development. The MAPC team is so well respected and, you know, so valued among members and leadership and throughout. Obviously, this pandemic has put the housing situation in our Commonwealth in a very difficult situation. But we are committed as a legislature to improving access to stable and affordable housing. I've long believed that housing is a human right, and I've seen that firsthand in my dealings as a public defender, but also as chair of the Winthrop Public Housing Authority. I was honored to be chairman of housing in really my first term as a state senator, and I worked with MAPC very closely on legislation such as the bond bill. It was funny, I was talking to my staff a couple days ago and getting ready for this event, and I said, hey, can you give me a few things that the MAPC has worked on us with? And they looked at me and said, Senator, they've worked with us on literally everything we've done in this office. So you can feel free to talk about anything. And that is from smart growth strategies to updating zoning codes in the housing committee. MAPC has been there. In my new work as chair of the Joint Committee on Transportation, I appreciate the MAPC's joint understanding that there is no silver bullet to combat the transportation woes in the Commonwealth faces. The solutions require long-term and short-term investments in our roads, adequate funding for our public transportation system, and working alongside municipal and federal and private partners to get the Commonwealth's infrastructure to where it needs to be. This session alone, I think, as Erin mentioned, we tackled the hands-free driving bill, which promotes road safety and improved transparency and interactions with law enforcement. In July, the Senate passed a $17 billion bond bill, which will make key investments in transportation infrastructure while addressing congestion and improve experiences for bikers and pedestrians in our roadways. And of course, a $200 million bond bill, which will be a direct investment in local road and bridge infrastructure that was passed this year. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of shown a light on the need for improved public transportation and has made housing access all the more urgent. And I am confident, that in our greatest times, there are still opportunities for meaningful and necessary growth. This is what Massachusetts does best. We lead the nation in times of despair, in times of uncertainty. The rest of the nation looks to us, looks to what legislation and policy we're moving. So we have a renewed call for safe and accessible housing and reliable transportation in my office and in the state Senate. And we need to do that alongside our partners in municipal government, making sure that they have all the resources that they need. And that's why I was so proud to be the primary sponsor on a $10 million grant for regional planning agencies for technical assistance in dealing with COVID. Because we must do everything we can in the midst of this pandemic to ensure that frontline workers, low-income communities who rely on public transportation and need to do the necessary work that comes with COVID-19, like contact tracing and providing ample PPP, have the support they need to make government run at the local level. At the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the legislature swiftly passed eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, understanding the role to secure housing can play in improving public health. And now with the statewide moratorium expired, we must continue to collaborate with our local and federal counterparts to ensure that families and individuals are not displaced. But like I said, though obstacles may have been exacerbated during this public health crisis, I'm confident that the solutions are possible through forward-thinking, innovation, and collaboration. Again, I want to reflect the gratitude you showed me directly back to everyone at MAPC for this recognition and an award. I look forward to our continued work on solutions to the most critical issues facing our Commonwealth and those that are most vulnerable amongst us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Boncory. Really appreciate it. And you can see all the emotions of the clapping, and I know I speak for the council when I say it's a real honor to honor you in this way. So thank you so much. Yes, and the applause in the chat. Thank you. Okay, so next up on the agenda is I'm going to call on Executive Director Mark to present the Excellence in Collaborative Leadership Award. Mark?
Sorry, needed to unmute myself there. Aaron, thank you very much. And thanks to Senator Boncory, if I may just say, we love and enjoy the partnership. The Senator also is blessed with an amazing staff with whom we can talk about all the many issues that we are dealing with every day. So thank you, Joe, so much. Not to mention, we're in the middle of doing a kind of a skinny master plan for the town of Winthrop. So that's another of our activities right now, figuring out some goals for them to accomplish over the course of the next 10 years. I am hoping that Rep. Gonzalez is here. I can't see him on the screen, but I hope there might be a way that I can actually see him as we begin to present. I know he's here. I don't know if he's on the screen. As we present this Collaborative Leadership Award to the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Rep. Gonzalez, hello. Thank you for joining us. Rep. Gonzalez is the chair of the caucus. He has been since, I believe, 2019. He represents about a third of the city of Springfield. So we're glad that he has traveled a whole 100 miles to join us today in Boston. And I want to say that this award has some personal meaning for me as well, because I know two of the original founding members of the caucus, Mel King, who I consider to be a mentor of mine, and who will famously remind me every time I see him that my father was his teacher in shop at the Abraham Lincoln School in the South End. So we go back a long, long way. And then, of course, the great Doris Bunty, who served in the legislature for many years, and then also served as the executive director of the Boston Housing Authority for many years. Those legislators, and I think about 5 others, had the foresight in the, I believe, the early 70s to establish the caucus. And it was initially the Black Legislative Caucus, but very shortly after that became the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. And the caucus has many accomplishments over the course of the last decades. But we are particularly drawn to all the work that they have been doing on issues of police violence, the racial wealth divide, and other ways in which racial inequity within our society hobbles all of us, as I said in my remarks earlier. The caucus put forward a 10-point plan which MAPC endorsed very early on, shortly after the death of George Floyd. And we encouraged the legislature to adopt those elements. Many of them were things that individual cities and towns could and have done. And of course, the Legislative Caucus also led efforts throughout the debate in the House and the Senate to make sure that both branches would pass meaningful and strong pieces of legislation to address issues of police violence and racial inequity in law enforcement here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You know, there are some who say, well, this is a problem in other parts of the state, but not so much in Massachusetts. Those of us who observe the situation understand that that is not the case. And we also understand that it is important to take efforts to try and prevent serious situations from occurring by learning from and understanding even those things that happen in other states. And so the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus not only develops ideas kind of on its own, knowing the situation in Massachusetts, but also brings to the attention of House and Senate leaders the best practices from other places, other states and other countries that we might use here to encourage positive, forward-looking, empathetic relationships between law enforcement and communities of color, and to overcome and prevent needless violence, which harms our society as well as it harms terribly individuals and often results in the loss of their lives. The caucus has kept all of us focused on these issues. And to some extent, we are making this award not only because of what has happened in the past, but because of what needs to happen in the future. And it is a way of our pledging here at MAPC that we will remain as allies and partners with the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus as they engage, first of all, in the ongoing effort to ensure that a strong bill on police violence emerges from conference committee, where it has stayed now for the past several months. And we all know that the more time passes, the more difficult it is to get a meaningful bill through. But the more forceful we must all be to work together and to work with commitment to make sure that the bill that emerges is serious and meaningful reform and reorganization. And even beyond that, we know that many of the issues that MAPC has championed, for example, on the question of arbitration, have not been included in this legislation, either by the House or the Senate, and constitute a reform agenda going forward, even after this bill is passed. And I know that Rep. Gonzalez and the entire caucus are going to be there with ideas, with heart, with commitment, and with drive. And I will pledge that MAPC will be there with you in partnership. So it is my honor, on behalf of the entire organization and board, to present this Collaborative Leadership Award to Rep. Gonzalez as chair of the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Rep. Gonzalez.
Thank you very much. And what a great way of introducing the caucus and its history, because I learned a little bit more today than I did know yesterday. And thank you for your involvement and your commitment, not only through the council, but also your historical knowledge of the work of the caucus, but also having friendships and guidance of past members of the caucus. On behalf of the caucus, I want to just say thank you, muchas gracias, to all who has made this possible and for recognizing the hard work and effort of not only the caucus of today, but the caucus of yesterday, for the years of dedication and commitment to the hard work of many individuals, Black, Latino, white, and everybody else that has made a commitment to making sure that we do look at issues that are important to all communities through that racial justice lens. This is the work, again, that is built on the shoulders of many who have come before us. But we are here today, and realistically, recognition that you have provided us for the work that we are committed to doing, because our stories are very similar. But I can say that many members of the caucus grew up no different than I did, in communities where many times the police has not been our friends. That many times the police have gone unaccountable, but also communities where police officers have made a commitment, good police officers have made a commitment to enhancing and building relationships between communities of color. So that needs to be stated in the same sentence, because our work is based upon removing, replacing, and holding accountable individuals who have stained their oath and have stained the badge, and recognizing the hard work and effort and the commitment of many of the good officers, men and women, that have contributed to the public safety, but also the public health of our communities of color. So the work that we are committed to do, it's a collaborative work led by Black and Latino legislators who have personal stories, not only from themselves, but also from their constituents. And that needs to continue as we move forward in the conference committee, that we make sure that the leadership of the Black and Latino caucus continues to be deliberate and to be at the forefront of any solution that comes about when we finalize our conference committee, and also hopefully to the governor's office without much concerns about having something that can be vetoed and the hard work and effort not go forward, particularly this session. So the work that you do is extremely important. First and foremost, before I just say a few more words, I just want to also thank Marjorie Weinberg. I don't think I have the opportunity to have worked with you, but I've heard great things about your work and effort, and congratulations on your recognition. Also, Senator Bancory, we've worked together, and you know, sometimes you don't get to know the history of somebody until they're introduced. I was happy to hear more about the hard work and effort of Senator Bancory, particularly when it comes to the Shannon Grant, because again, that is part of what the commitment of the Black and Latino caucus is. How do we impose upon legislation that improves the quality of life for all communities, but also with the Shannon Grant, how it's been effective in promoting public safety and prevention in communities of color. So thank you, Senator Bancory, for the hard work and effort, and look forward to continue to work with you as we continue to address the public health crisis that we see in this country and in this state, particularly when it comes to communities of color. And if COVID has taught us one thing more, is that we need to pay attention. When it comes to the Latino community, fastest and largest growing community, which will have a significant impact in the population of Massachusetts. And if we don't make significant changes into the poverty rate that exists, Massachusetts will suffer. If we don't look at the wealth gap that continues to exist in the Black community in Boston and throughout the state, this state will suffer in the future. So we have to make strategic, intentional changes to legislation policy that addresses those concerns. So I want to just say thank you on behalf of the Black and Latino Caucus. We will continue to do the work that we feel is important, but we will take a different stance when it comes to communities of color. We will set the agenda. We will work and collaborate with many experts in different fields that can enhance the solutions that we think best represent the communities of color. I think it's critical and important that we understand that for too long, the agendas to address the issues and the ills in the communities of color have not been strategized specifically by individuals in the communities of color. So we want to make that clear that we want to continue to change and enhance on the opportunity to work collaboratively with all interested parties, but the agenda needs to be closer to the communities of color and be intentional when it comes to that, particularly on addressing the economic deficiencies in our communities, our small businesses. And going back to the police reform, I think that's just one step in the right direction to address the racial injustices that have existed, but not only in police departments, but in municipalities and courts and hospital systems and a whole bunch of other departments that we need to put a different type of lens to make sure that we can address the ills that continue to pertain, particularly more so in communities of color. So again, on behalf of the caucus, I'm excited as a young man that came from the government assistance program with a mother that raised her children and put them all through college. And then at the age of 60, she went and got her GED. And this story is possible where I today am a legislator that is part of a committed 200 members of legislators committed to enhancing and promoting Massachusetts in communities of color in all ways possible. I'm excited that this is a recognition that we accept with our hearts and thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. We look forward to be working with you, and we thank you once again. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Legislator Gonzalez. And for those who maybe have been around MAPC council meetings for a while, it's a true pleasure to give this recognition to the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. This recognition, this excellence in collaborative leadership is really the first time we've given this kind of recognition, and I think it speaks to the caucus in general. You are a trailblazer, you are seen and you are appreciated, and I hope that this award, this recognition continues to be given year after year, because I think what we need more of is collaborative leadership and thoughtful decision. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your words. And please share with the caucus our gratitude. Next up on the agenda, I'm going to call on Deputy Director Rebecca to present the Robert Davidson Staff Recognition Award. Rebecca?
Great, thank you, Erin. And thank you, Senator Boncory and Representative Gonzalez. It's a pleasure to get to work with you and award you these honors today. The favorite part of my job every year is working on the Davidson Staff Achievement Award. We go through a nomination process where I get to hear from all of my colleagues how much they value their colleagues across the agency. And this year, the amount of thanks and value that I heard from our staff was tremendous. I can't say enough about the fabulous work that everyone at MAPC has been doing over the last 8 months from home to continue to help better the region. But our awardee today, I think, got more nominations than anyone in the history of the award, and from more departments and more diversity across the agency. And so I think at first, I just wanted to give you a little bit about what her colleagues are saying about her. Margie is always available to help. She always makes time. She's generous with her time. She brings honesty, guidance, and patience to her work. She brings true curiosity and passion and makes things run smoothly. It is my pleasure to get to work with Margie. She started with the agency as our procurement manager and has taken over as our general counsel. And every day, I think she brings a passion, curiosity to the work of procurement, which for some might not seem like a place to bring passion and curiosity, but having learned about it over the last 12 years, it is very exciting. And I think you can see her work across the region, everything from our bike share systems, our LED street lights, unique ways to bring public arts to our communities, and recently the urgent taxi program. If you look in your email, you'll see she's been working with DLS and the IG's office, helping us think about how can we use our emergency procurement provisions to make sure that we can really combat the COVID crisis and get the supplies we need in our cities and towns. And the work that she provides and the guidance that she provides within the agency is amazing. She's really helped us as we've transitioned to working remotely, to think about how we can do all of this, while following the law, and at the same time is always available to all of her colleagues to make sure that they can do their work and accomplish their projects. So it's with great pleasure that I recognize Marjorie Weinberg with the Davidson Staff Achievement Award. I think we also might be joined with some of her family. So I welcome them, even if their cameras might not be on. We're so proud of Margie and grateful to have her here at MAPC. Margie?
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Mark and MAPC. My appreciation to both Representative Gonzalez and Senator Boncore for all the amazing work that you do every day. Generally, the lawyer is the buzzkill in the room and not the interesting person, but MAPC has given me the ability to have meaningful work and to be able to have direct impact on the communities that we serve. Generally, you're behind the scenes, you don't get to see the result of the work that you do, but at MAPC, you get to see how you have an impact on your communities and on our state. And it has been an unbelievable honor to represent MAPC. The staff is family and an appreciative family. It is a remarkable amount of work and diverse amount of work that MAPC's staff does on a daily basis. My job is a small one. It's just to make sure that the work can be done and do so without indictments. So I am proud every day to be a part of this family and to be able to represent their interests. I want to call out my dad, David Saltiel, who's here. He recently had open heart surgery, but he's on the phone with us. He is to this day, the most amazing corporate lawyer there could ever be, and an amazing person, but even better, he's been a remarkable father and there for me every step of my law career and through my life. I also want to recognize my husband who stepped out of the courtroom to be here on the phone, and to thank him for being my partner in life, for being such an amazing dad to Jake and Sarah, and for being on this journey with me. And lastly, I just want to thank you all. Every time you come to this meeting, every time you make a decision, every time you vote, you have an incredible impact on all of our lives. I thank you for the sacrifices you make of your time and for what you share with all of us on a daily basis. Thank you for letting me be a small cog in your wheel. I'm an incredibly proud person to be part of this family. Thank you.
Margie, it's too early to cry. That was great. Thank you so much. And I feel pretty good that I'm not alone with getting choked up there. I see a few of us in the space, and you're just amazing. And I hope you're told that every day. And you can obviously see in the chat that everyone agrees, and you're incredible, and you're truly worthy of this award. So congratulations again. Okay, let's get to business so we can move it along here. All right, so next up is I'm going to call on Eric Hove. He's the co-director of strategic initiatives, who's going to open the Metro Common 2050 strategy session and interactive workshop. So Eric.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Nice to see so many people joining us this morning. I'm Eric Hope, the co-director of strategic initiatives, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about where we've been with Metro Common, what's next, and I'm going to introduce how we're planning for uncertainties in the regional plan. I'm also going to take us on a little walk down memory lane to show just how much change can happen in 30 years, which is the time horizon for Metro Common 2050. Before I'd start, I also want to echo Mark's thanks to Lizzie Grobel. She's been a great partner and a great leader on the regional plan. We're definitely going to miss her, and her contributions to MAPC and to the plan really have been tremendous. So best of luck to you, Lizzie. Next. We began the year back when we could meet in person with municipal CEO breakfasts. We talked about municipal workforce diversity, recruitment, and retention. Then COVID hit, and we pivoted to the online virtual world. But it actually has been amazingly smooth in terms of the planning process. And we've had to do a lot of thinking, but at the same time, we've been able to make progress and continue to meet with stakeholders across the region, getting feedback to help us create this plan. We've had a number of action area workshops identifying the challenges and opportunities confronting our region. And now we're moving into policy development. Next, please. Been drafting policies and programs that will help get us to our long-range goals. And we've been working on modeling, trying to figure out if different things happen in the future, what kind of shifts we'll have to make to our policies to keep us on track to achieving our goals. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, this idea of future uncertainties and what kind of shifts we may have to make to stay on track. Next, please. And over the winter, we'll be vetting the policy recommendations. We have a number of research releases that are coming out, and we'll be finalizing the plan content and moving it for adoption and then into implementation. And again, today, we're really focusing on the changes, the future uncertainties, and what kind of impacts that may have on us and what kind of shifts we have to make. Before we jump into the time machine and go back to 1990 to remind us what life was like then, I do want to thank Sam Seidel, MAPC's treasurer, for inspiring part of this presentation and for contributing a number of the photographs to it. Next, please. That's me 30 years ago, high school senior. We had just won the state championship in hockey, and it was really our miracle on ice. Next, please. And the world was changing. Apartheid was crumbling, as was the Berlin Wall. Next. And believe it or not, somehow we all survived without Amazon and Google that seemed to cater to all our needs, even those needs that we may not be aware of today. Next. The World Wide Web was just a baby. The first website was created. Before then, when you were a student, you actually had to go to a library to write a paper. Next, please. The first text message was sent. I think that might be Mark Rassicott's flip phone on the left. We had cell phones, but they didn't fit in your pocket, and CDs replaced cassette tapes for listening to music. Next. And they ruined the Ford Mustang. Next. We were voguing. Biz Markie and Vanilla Ice were on the top 100 charts. Next. The Simpsons arrived in Springfield, and Tickle Me Elmo was the hot Christmas toy of the year. Next, please. Closer to home, we've experienced tremendous change in Greater Boston. Some good, some bad, but some neighborhoods you wouldn't even recognize from 30 years ago. On the left, it's the combat zone. It's now family friendly, but today it's also littered with high-rise luxury apartments. Next, please. The miles of elevated asphalt that ran through the middle of Boston have been buried, now replaced by the Rose Kennedy Greenway. Next. And change continues today with the Leechmere Station on the left, finally welcoming the Green Line extension. Next. Discoveries and technological leaps have always transformed society. We started cooking food, planting crops, leading to the Industrial Revolution, and over centuries of urbanization, people have adapted. With air travel and the digital age, the world has become more connected and much smaller. Today, we're still learning to plan for and respond to uncertainties and things that we did not foresee. The global pandemic we're living through today, natural disasters, and an evolving social media landscape. Next, please. While we may not have the power to control world and national events, collectively, we do have the power to shape the laws and policies and programs that affect us. Together, we can influence the future that will be. Next. And about that Mustang, they brought it back. It's now a plug-in SUV. Next. And while we can't know what the future holds, we can be sure that there will be new innovations and unexpected events. Will we finally have flying cars? I hope so. How do we maximize the benefits of automation and nanotechnology while minimizing the negatives? And how do we do this equitably? Sarah Philbrick is now going to discuss how we are planning for uncertainties in MetroCom in 2050. She's going to lead us through an exercise that explores how we here in Metro Boston might respond to two such future uncertainties. Thanks, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that presentation and that look back to 1990. I'm going to talk about the next 30 years and looking out to 2050. And like Eric said, we'll be doing an activity today thinking about how our policies can respond to future uncertainty, even if we don't know what that uncertainty is. So first, I want to start with this idea that the future is based on things inside and outside of our control. We can anticipate that there will be change in the future, but we don't necessarily know what that change is, or by how much, or how quickly, or in which direction. But we do have the opportunity and responsibility to plan for this uncertain future, even if we don't know exactly what it looks like. So today we're going to explore major uncertainties outside of our control at the regional level and speculate or think about how we can react to them in order to achieve our goals. We know that policies tailored to today's needs might not work the same way under different conditions. There are policies and strategies we think about today, and we use them, or we come up with them primarily thinking about a possible, or the way we think the future will come out. If you think about our typical projections or the work we've done in the past, we say we probably need this many housing units. And that might be true, but in a different possible future, it might be even more important for some of those policies or strategies, or in other futures, it might be less important. Also, policies or strategies that we could choose today that would work well under all three of those futures. Something like protecting our drinking water would probably be important no matter what 2050 looks like. So in the Metro Common process, we've already thought about where we want to be in 2050. We want a climate resilient region. We want homes for all. We want healthy and safe neighborhoods, economic prosperity. These are all of our goals. And this is where we want to be in 2050. And what we're talking about today is how we might get there, even if we don't know what's coming our way. We're examining three key uncertainties in Metro Common. The first is regional demographics in the economy. This is how many people live in our region, who they are, what kinds of jobs we have in our region, what the economy looks like, how many people want to move here, etc. We also have the future of travel, and this includes both the technology that might be available for us to move around. So will we have flying cars, or will we have the T, or different types of autonomous vehicles, and also how much people want to move around. Will people mainly work from home? Will they want to travel to get all of their groceries in person or get them delivered? So those two things sort of make up the future of travel for us. And we're also examining federal policy and how context at the national level influences the way we have to respond at the state and local level. Although we won't be talking about that today because we do not have enough time to get into that. So these three key uncertainties examined in the plan were developed from a group of internal and external advisory groups in consultation with MAPC staff over the last year or so. They were chosen because they have a high likelihood of changing and will have a high impact on the region, and we know that they will change. There are known unknowns, or the things we know will change, but we don't necessarily know how much or which direction. We're not examining really what we call sort of black swan or really extreme events that would have a high impact, like an earthquake or something, because those are, something like that might happen, but planning for one that we don't know about will be difficult to sort of nail down. These are the things we know will change, and we know we'll have to respond to. So we're going to explore those first two, demographics in the economy and travel, in more detail today, and then ask you questions about how possible impacts of those futures might change our strategies. So just to warm up our brains, I'm going to give folks about 30 seconds to put down some ideas in the chat box of what are some ways you think the region's population, economy, or travel might be different in 2050 than it is today. Right. I was going to read some of them out loud to you, but I'm really saying I can't see the chat on my screen. So I hope you can read some of other folks out loud. Maybe folks have similar ideas to you or different ideas. There are some wild changes that Eric just showed us in the past 30 years, and who knows what will happen in the next 30. So I'm going to go a little bit more in detail about regional demographics in the economy, and then we'll break out into a breakout room for you to do an interactive activity, and then we'll come back and talk about travel and transportation. There are some things we know about the way that demographics and the economy impact housing in particular, which is where our focus is going to be today. The first thing we know is that a supply and demand imbalance and income inequality is part of the reason that we have such high housing unaffordability in our region and even in other regions in the country. Our region in particular has a strong economy, numerous educational institutions, and a historically vibrant region that have brought lots of people to Metro Boston over the past 20 years. But we also know that housing production has proceeded at rates slower than other regions of the country with comparable growth. At the same time, we have increasing income inequality. Folks who are at the high end of the income spectrum are making more, and middle income folks and low income folks are making even less. And so that leads to a difficult housing market where low income, middle income folks are constantly being sort of overbid or priced out, and more households are becoming cost burdened. We also know that the traditional household is changing. This is due to both financial and social factors. Younger generations tend to live with parents or roommates longer in life. When and if they do have children, they tend to have more children. And also due to student debt and other reasons, people are deciding to live in these situations. We also have different ideas of what a traditional family or household looks like, and that will continue to change over the years. And so our housing needs to be flexible to all the different ways that people live. The last thing that we know that we're going to talk about today is that baby boomers will retire and mostly free up housing as they age. Baby boomers started turning 65 in 2010. Now the oldest baby boomers are 75. They occupy a large percentage of our large single-family housing units in the region. And we know as folks retire, become elderly, or pass away, the types of housing that they'll need will change, and the type of housing that's being freed up will change over the next 30 years. So we have those things that we know. We also have lots of things that we think we know. These are sort of the possible solutions or policies that MAPC has been promoting or advocating for a while. One of those is reducing barriers to housing production. This could be through zoning or other measures that make it easier to build housing in our region, particularly multifamily housing, rental housing, and other types of units that are hard to come by. Another possible solution is encouraging housing adaptation. This could be the creation of accessory dwelling units, the conversion of single-family homes to multifamily housing, the adaptive reuse of non-residential buildings to housing, ways that we can use the buildings and the tools we have to come up with more housing units. Another possible solution that we've been advocating for is expanding inclusionary zoning. Inclusionary zoning maximizes the percent of units that must be set aside for low income or very low income residents by having developers include that in their development so that they're being paid for by the market as opposed, or developer profits as opposed to public subsidies. But increasing public subsidies is another one of our possible solutions or things that we've been advocating for. These subsidies could be for affordable housing construction or vouchers or preservation of existing affordability. And they're important services that enable low and very low income residents to participate in our expensive housing market. And the last one we'll talk about today is supporting home ownership programs. These are programs specifically targeted to folks in formerly redline communities or communities of color that help mitigate discrimination in the real estate and mortgage industry and provide avenues for people to own homes who have historically been kept out of the housing market. So those are the things that we know, we think we know, and then we have lots of things we don't know, particularly about 2050 will look like. So we've come up with 3 different views of what 2050 might look like, and none of them will probably be correct. And we're not going to talk today about which one is most likely or which one we want to have happen, but instead how those strategies would have to change or which ones would be better or worse in these different scenarios. So the 3 possible futures that we're going to talk about in our breakout rooms today are one in which 2050 has a housing market stagnation. This is could be due to a combination of a long recession, potentially declining university enrollment, and fewer young people moving to our region, so that the growth in housing demand is much slower than it has been historically, and there's less competition for rental units, specifically urban small units. Another possible 2050 view is that we could have a baby boomer exodus from our region. This could be due to a high cost of living and cultural preferences where baby boomers decide to leave the region at higher rates than their predecessors, and they put more single family homes and large units on the market. Another possible future is an economic boom, which looks similar to maybe the Metro Boston area pre-pandemic. We could have a 2050 where we have continued strength, maybe particularly in our medical and educational industry, and we're generally attracting more and more people to our region. This could result in an increased demand for housing. So what we're going to have you do in your breakout rooms is think about how these strategies, the things that we think we know are good ideas, might perform under these 3 scenarios. And I have a few examples here that I'll go through, and you can come up with your own connections in your breakout rooms. So for example, expanding inclusionary zoning might be even more important in an economic boom scenario. A strong market demand could be harnessed to create more deed-restricted units, and it might be even more important for us to ramp up those policies. So on the other hand, in a stagnant housing market, it could make expanding inclusionary zoning could make it more difficult for developers to build middle-income housing because they find that they're not able to make as big of a profit or enough profit to be worth their time. And so that could only make the type of development we see be luxury housing. Another possible strategy that maybe is less effective but still important is reducing housing in a stagnant housing market, reducing regulatory barriers to housing production. Having a weak market might dampen production no matter what, but removing those barriers probably isn't going to hurt anything and could still probably help. So Sasha has been using her wizardry over the past few minutes to put one in breakout rooms. You're going to be whisked away to a room with a facilitator and a scribe, And we're going to ask you to think about how these strategies would perform under these scenarios and sort of make your own lines on this. We won't actually be drawing them, but make your own connections and think about either how the strategies would perform or how the strategies might need to adapt to work better. And we'll be using all this information in Metro Common to help us think about how to plan for future uncertainties. So Sasha will ask you away, be in your breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to talk about transportation.
Hi, folks. My name is Sasha. I'm supporting On Tech today. If you did not receive an invitation to a breakout room, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a button that has breakout on it, and you can join via that button. If you are not seeing that and you're not seeing an invitation, please send me a message via the chat and I will place you in a breakout room. Thank you. Sarah, if you would like to join a breakout room, let me know. You're muted.
Thanks. I'm good for now, but I might join one in a few minutes.
Emily, would you like me to send you to a breakout room?
Yes. And then for the 15 people that are still on the line, is that just people that haven't clicked accept?
Yes. So just to remind folks, if you have not joined your breakout room, if you did not receive an invitation, you should be able to see it in the bottom where you see your microphone and your video. There should be a button that says join breakout room. You should be able to click on that to join your room. If you're not seeing that invitation, please send me a message via the chat and I will work with you to send you into your room. It looks like we have Joe Reynolds, Paul Halkiotis, Karen Connolly, Bronwyn Cook, Robert Weiss, William Fellon, Buzz Constable, Gretchen, Terry Gleason, and Valerie. So if you all are having trouble joining a breakout room, please send me a message via the chat. And Emily, I will move you into a breakout room right now.
Great, thank you.
Hi, folks. So I'll just make this announcement one more time. If you received the invitation to join breakout room, Emily, would you like to go to a different one?
Yeah, there was 3 MAPC people there.
Great.
And it looks like there's about 6 or 7 people per breakout.
Yeah, it's because some breakouts have more folks. It's just dependent on who has joined where.
Will you put me somewhere where there's one with more, I guess? That way I can be helpful.
Yes, I am actually going to send you to Karen and Betsy's room because
Great.
I think Betsy was having some technical difficulties.
Perfect.
Emily, what room did I send you to?
You sent
I
me
see.
to 10, but that was Mara and Jen.
Okay, you should have it. Terry, yes, you should join breakout room 4. That is the correct room that you should be joining.
Sarah, great job. If you go back into the chats, there were some really great comments.
Yeah, I'm reading through them now.
And Emily, you should have received a notification.
Oh, sorry, I just hit admit.
That's fine. Sarah,
Ben just
so
asked for the PowerPoint in the chat, so I'm going to send one.
who asked you for the PowerPoint?
Ben?
Ben.
Oh. Okay, I can do that. Emily,
I can do it right now.
Okay, great. Emily, I moved you to your breakout.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick thing here and then I'll accept.
Okay, great. Terry, so we will be splitting into breakout rooms twice. So for this first topic, we'll be focusing on demographics, and then the second topic will be focused on the future of travel. So every group is discussing the same topic. We're just splitting folks into smaller groups so that you can have a conversation. So that if you'd like to stay in the main room for this next portion of the presentation and then join your breakout room for travel, that's completely fine. We'll be reconvening in just a few minutes. Sarah, are you sending Ben the link to his presentation?
I did.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. He said, can you send the PowerPoint? So I sent the whole deck.
Oh, the PowerPoint. That's fine. Okay. I thought he didn't have his Excel. That's great. Thank you. Sarah, we are about 5 minutes behind. We have a little bit of buffer built in to our closing. Our closing right now is 10 minutes. So I'm pulling those 5 minutes from that, but I just wanted to let you know so you had a sense of where we're at. So
yeah,
I'll pull
that's great. Thank you.
In a minute.
Yeah, it also says we are live on YouTube. Is that this room right here or the breakout room or? Oh, sorry, your sound cut out.
It's this room right here.
Hi, YouTube.
I think we currently have. Okay, Matt, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I was not needed in that other meeting, so I can just stay on.
Okay, perfect.
And Sasha, can you see my screen again?
I can.
Great.
Great, and it looks like somebody just joined us on the phone. We are currently in the middle of an interactive breakout room session, but we will be coming back in just a minute. So if you can just hang tight, we will continue with our presentation and then invite you into a breakout room for our second interactive session. Okay, and I'm going to close the rooms.
Thanks, Sasha.
Yep.
Sasha, can you give me a quick heads up when you think most people are back? It's hard for me to see.
Yes, I can. Currently, it looks like folks are still in their rooms. Okay, I think we're good. Sarah.
Great. I hope you all really enjoyed your breakout sessions. I was reading through all the comments put in the chat earlier, and there were some great ideas in there. We're going to do another similar activity where we talk about the future of travel in this broader group, and then we'll be split into the same breakout session so you can do the same activity with some new policies and new futures. So once again, there are some things we know about travel's impact on our region. We know that auto congestion is eating away our time, making us sick, and warming the planet, specifically pre-COVID. Metro Boston is one of the most congested regions in the country. The transportation sector accounts for the largest share of the state's greenhouse gas emissions. And we know that auto dependency is costly for households in terms of time and money, and that those emissions are really unhealthy for people who live in places where they're breathing in auto emissions. We also know that land use affects travel demand and choices. Where people live and work has a large effect on how many vehicles they own and how much they drive them. Our own research has shown that providing abundant parking at residential developments attracts car-owning households who are more likely to use their cars even in transit-dependent locations. And people who live close to jobs, retail, and services are more likely to walk or use high-quality transit if it's available to them than using their cars. We also know that we're experiencing a transportation finance crisis. The gas tax is declining in its value as cars become more fuel efficient. We have lots of transportation debt and a maintenance backlog that limits our ability of the region and the state in general to make investments in long-term infrastructure or even make significant transit service improvements. So in addition to those things we know, once again, there's things that we think we know. These are possible solutions that MAPC and our allies have been advocating for or been talking about for a long time. The first is reallocating roadway space to dedicated lanes. This dedicated lanes for walking and biking, for transit, so bus-only lanes, or for high efficiency vehicles or people who like to carpool. So rethinking about the way that we use our roadway space and who gets priority in that space is one of our possible policy solutions. Another is gradually replacing the gas tax with a VMT fee or any type of user fee that discourages single occupancy vehicles and promotes shared travel. That would be a revenue stream independent of any fuel efficiency changes in technology in the future. Another policy might be increasing funding for major capital improvements, including the electrification of the MBTA system, or route expansions, or regional rail, or really large investments in the type of service that our transit provides. And the last is limiting commercial and residential parking, specifically in dense transit-served areas, and establishing new fees or taxes for the use of curb space or off-street parking that discourage driving in areas where it's easier to take transit. And once again, with those things that we know and we think we know, there's also lots of things we don't know, specifically about the future of travel. So we've come up again with 3 possible futures. We're not asking you to talk about which one you think is more likely or which one you think is the best or what you want the future to look like, but just how these policies might respond in these 3 possible futures or how well they might perform. So the first possible 2050 is what we're calling a stay-at-home future. This could be as a result of increased remote work. I know lots of people mentioned that in the comments earlier in the presentation. Ubiquitous delivery, virtual reality or better, virtual meetings, where travel demand is dramatically reduced. There could be significantly increased amounts of freight and delivery, but more people are not using their personal vehicles to commute. There's also a potential 2050 where we have ubiquitous autonomy, where rapid technology improvements, permissive regulations, and consumer acceptance of autonomous vehicles result in widespread adoption. This autonomy could dramatically reduce the perceived time cost of travel, where a 4-hour drive doesn't mean as much because you're able to do things in your back seat and sort of ride comfortably to wherever you want to go. And the last possible future that we'll be talking about today is called Yesterday's Travel Choices Tomorrow. This is really thinking about taking our region back in time to like 2010. This is a future where AV technology never really takes off, and shared mobility technology that we have today, such as Uber and Lyft, might not work in the future if we don't have autonomous vehicles and if the cost of labor is recognized or venture capital money dries up. So this is a world in which ride hailing really goes back to being a luxury. So once again, we're going to put you in your breakout groups and have you think about how these policies or strategies might perform under different scenarios. We've given you 3 examples again. One of them is thinking about in a ubiquitous autonomy future, replacing the gas tax with a VMT tax might be even more important, especially if we have more fuel efficient vehicles or EVs. This could help minimize driving, particularly driving where autonomous vehicles are going around the block with nobody in the cars, because the fees are tied to how many vehicle or miles are traveled as opposed to how much gas is used. In that ubiquitous autonomy future, we could also think about investment in transit route expansions. And while that might still be a good idea, it might not be as cost effective if ridership has plummeted, or if we think about the way that we do ridership projections today, those might not become fully realized in this ubiquitous autonomous future. Another possible outcome could be in a stay-at-home future, something like the investment of the electrification of the MBTA might change. The MBTA might be used by a smaller share of the population, but in electrification could still help us achieve our climate goals, which are another big part of MetroCom. And so even if it might be slightly less effective than it is today, it could still be very important. So once again, Sasha's gonna use her wizardry to put you in your breakout rooms, and hopefully you can continue the conversation you were having before with these new policies and scenarios, and think about the future of travel in our region.
Hi, folks. So again, for those who have not joined your breakout room, you should have received an invitation to join your room. But if not, if you click at the bottom of your screen, there should be a breakout room button that you can click, and that should take you to your breakout room. If you are having trouble getting into your breakout room, please send me a message in the chat. Thank you. Sarah, we are, we're going to spend a little extra time in the breakout rooms. So I think everyone's going to reconvene at 11:24, 11:25 or so. So it'll be about 5 minutes to do closing. And Erin needs to close out the meeting as well. So just something to keep in mind for that. Also, can you make sure to mention the December workshops so that folks know that if they want to continue talking about this, they have another opportunity to? You're muted.
Sorry, I will definitely do that. Are there other events that you would like me to mention?
I think that is the key event. You can mention that we're having a research release on Zoning Atlas, on the Zoning Atlas research release on December 17th, and that we're having a shared streets webinar on Tuesday, the 24th of November at 2 p.m. I would say those are.
Sorry, that was the 17th? No, that was yesterday. When was that?
So the Zoning Atlas is on December 17th. And
and the Shared Streets webinar.
Shared Streets webinar is Tuesday, the 24th at 2 p.m.
And they can find information about that on the MetroCom website or the MAPC website?
Information for the workshops will be on the Metro Common website. You can just say that we'll be sending a follow-up email to all registrants with the links. And as you talk, I'm going to plug those links in the chat as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then Sarah, are we able to share out this presentation with after the council in an email? Or do you just want to share the recording?
About it, but I don't see a reason why. I think my only possible concern could be that people take these policies and they're like, look, you have a presentation where you're supporting this. But I don't think there's anything wild in here that we would be concerned about.
Okay, great.
Closing slide, I'll go back. So I'll mention those things and then turn it over to Erin to close this idea.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sasha, can you give me the go ahead again when people are back in?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
We have, I think, a couple more minutes. Okay, Sarah, I am closing the rooms now, so folks should be joining in the next minute or so.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Sarah, folks are trickling back in. I'd give it another few seconds, and then I think you're good to start. I think you're good.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for staying to the council meeting. We really appreciate you participating in this exercise. I know it was really short, but luckily we are continuing to do these workshops where you'll have more time to talk through these issues. We'll also have our third uncertainty to talk about the future of federal policy at two different workshops, one on December 1st in the morning and one on December 3rd in the afternoon. So if you like this activity but feel like you didn't have enough time to speak, or if you think some other folks you work with would be really interested, Sasha will be sending out an email after this with more details about how to register for that. We also have a webinar on November 24th about the Shared Street program and how to navigate MassDOT's grant program. So that will also be in our follow-up email. And then also be on the lookout on December 17th, we'll be releasing a really cool new piece of research that we're calling the Zoning Atlas, which is zoning information for every city and town in our region on one map, sort of with the same, so that you can really understand how zoning looks across our region. I'm really excited about that and really excited for that piece of work to come as well. So all of those will be in a follow-up email. Thank you again for staying. And I'm going to turn it over to Erin to close us out.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you to the breakout room facilitators and the note takers and everyone who participated in that. I know that some people want to share more, and I think you should continue to do so. I know in my breakout group, we had a lot of great insight, some that I never even thought of. So I hope that was your experience as well. On the agenda next, we are wrapping up. We had a very busy morning. I can't even believe how much stuff we did. Really, when you think about it, we did some business, we did an election, we announced the MPO election, we heard from the executive director, we were able to recognize some very deserving award recipients, and we had some Metro Common breakout rooms, which is such a productive fall council meeting, albeit virtual. But I'm thrilled that everyone kind of was able to stick around, those who could, and those who didn't, that's okay too. I really appreciate everyone kind of taking the time to do so. So at this time, as long as I am not seeing Mark and Rebecca give me any frantic, okay, good, perfect, no other business is before us, I would love to have a motion to adjourn or a second from any council member, would be great. John DePriest, thank you. And Yolanda, thank you. So John DePriest, who is quick on the keys, motioned to adjourn the meeting, and I have Yolanda with the second. Please utilize the chat to vote. So all those in favor, please do so at this time. Wow, everyone is very quick on the, quick on the keys. Thank you so much. Great, and I'm going to give space for anyone to be against the motion to adjourn. Or any abstentions if you're feeling a little cheeky this morning. Not seeing any, great. I believe the motion passes. Thank you so much, everyone. The meeting is adjourned at 11:28, 2 minutes ahead of schedule. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all at future MAPC meetings and events, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.